Angel Hernandez, one of the most controversial umpires in Major League Baseball, has faced intense criticism and backlash throughout his career. Over 60 active petitions have been organized by various individuals seeking his removal. High-profile players like Chipper Jones and Bryce Harper have publicly condemned him, with Harper even screaming at Hernandez and throwing his helmet into the crowd. Pedro Martinez and CC Sabathia have also called for Hernandez's dismissal. MLB itself has been at odds with Hernandez, particularly after he sued the league for racial discrimination earlier in the season. One notable incident highlighted Hernandez's contentious reputation. During a game, Hernandez made a call that was 6.78 inches outside the strike zone, an egregious miss, the worst recorded by umpire auditors since they began tracking calls in 2014. This call ignited a frenzy in the baseball world, with many fans and analysts expressing outrage. Despite this, Hernandez remains in his position, as MLB has not taken action against him. The frustration with Hernandez is compounded by the performance of other umpires, some of whom rank worse than Hernandez in terms of accuracy. One umpire was seen yelling at an injured player to leave the field, while another ejected a manager for an argument initiated by a fan. In a separate game, a strike was called on a pitch that was clearly outside, and a rain delay resulted in more controversial calls. Umpire errors, particularly those visible through TV strike zones, are often glaringly obvious when compared to the officials' calls. However, from the umpire's perspective, distinguishing balls from strikes without the aid of a visual box can be challenging, contributing to the frequent disputes and dissatisfaction among players and fans alike. Here are some examples of how critical umpire calls can be. 1. Strike. If you said strike, you were right. The pitch was right down the middle. 2. Strike. If you said strike again, you were right. This pitch was on the outside corner. 3. Ball. If you said strike here, you made one of the worst calls of the season. This pitch was 3.48 inches off the plate, ranking as the 11th worst call of May 2023 out of over 27,000 calls on lefties. It was worse than 99.9995% of calls that month. 4. Ball. If you said ball, you were wrong. This pitch hit the outside corner. 5. Ball or strike. According to the Cardinals broadcast, it was a ball. The Mets broadcast called it a strike. MLB.com agreed it was a ball, but Baseball Savant considered it a strike. The umpire ruled it a ball. The difference between a good call and one of the worst calls ever can be just a few inches. What makes Pat Hoberg's achievement so remarkable is his perfect game in 2022. Out of over 18,000 games tracked, Hoberg is the only umpire in history to call every ball and strike correctly. He made 129 calls, and each one was accurate. For instance, a pitch 24 inches off the plate was correctly called a ball, while an almost identical pitch just 1.24 inches different was correctly called a strike. Borderline pitches, those in the shadow zone, are particularly challenging. On average, umpires miss 9 of these calls per game. Hoberg faced 44 such borderline pitches in the shadow zone and made correct calls on all of them, showcasing his extraordinary precision and consistency. Despite Pat Hoberg's remarkable accuracy, with every one of the 44 borderline calls in the shadow zone correct, some still question his performance. For instance, during a heated game, Alex Cora criticized Hoberg after a pitch that was deemed a ball by the automated zone but correctly called a strike by Hoberg. This led to Red Sox players talking trash from the dugout, which escalated to Cora ejecting Alex Verdugo, who was frustrated by earlier calls. The tension continued in the 7th inning. Red Sox manager Alex Cora was particularly agitated after several close pitches to Alex Bregman. Despite hitting the corner on the first 2 pitches, 4 subsequent pitches were balls. Cora, believing at least one of those should have been a strike, erupted from the dugout, berating Hoberg, kicking dirt, and ultimately getting ejected. Reviewing the tape shows that every call Hoberg made during this controversy was accurate. Even a pitch the TV deemed a ball was correctly called a strike by Hoberg. This accuracy proved Hoberg was more precise than the automated strike zone. This season, as controversies and criticisms swirl around umpires, the perception of their performance often appears worse than it is. Despite the complaints, MLB umpires are on track for their most accurate season ever, marking the 17th consecutive year of improvement. Even Angel Hernandez, frequently criticized for his calls, has shown increased accuracy each season. The challenges of umpiring and the scrutiny that comes with it reveal how difficult it is to maintain an unbiased perspective on their performance. Angel Hernandez is often cited as one of the worst umpires in baseball, with his reputation marred by a series of controversial calls. One of the earliest incidents that cemented his poor reputation occurred in a 1999 game between the Braves and Mets. Hernandez called a runner safe in the bottom of the 11th inning during a tie game, leading to the Braves' victory. Mets players and fans were outraged, with Bobby Valentine losing his composure and Mike Piazza expressing his frustration by thrusting the ball at Hernandez and then spiking it on the ground. Piazza later described the call as the worst he had seen in his 20-year career. A few years later, Hernandez was involved in another contentious moment when he called multiple check swings against the Dodgers. Mariano Duncan, upset by the calls, charged out of the dugout, threw his hat at Hernandez, and was subsequently suspended. Hernandez, ever the sport, picked up the hat and gave it to a lucky fan. Duncan returned to the field with his hat taped to his head as a symbol of his protest. However, it was an incident involving Steve McMichael, a former Chicago Bears tackle, that further highlighted Hernandez's controversial status. During a Cubs game, McMichael, who was in attendance and tasked with singing "Take Me Out to the Ballgame" during the 7th-inning stretch, used his moment in the spotlight to criticize Hernandez. McMichael booed Hernandez and announced to the crowd that he would confront him after the game. Hernandez, visibly upset, stared down McMichael from the field, adding to his growing list of disputes and controversies. When Steve McMichael finished singing "Take Me Out to the Ballgame," he was ejected from the game, though it was Randy Marsh, Hernandez's partner, who issued the ejection for McMichael's remarks. This clip, which has millions of views, is often mistakenly attributed to Hernandez, given his visible frustration during the incident. Back then, Hernandez was relatively unknown outside of baseball, though within the sport, players had already begun to rank him poorly. In 1999, he was placed 31st out of 36 National League umpires, and by 2006, he was voted the third-worst umpire in the league. A 2010 umpire scouting report labeled him as one of the most vilified umpires in Major League Baseball. Despite this negative perception among players, MLB's view of Hernandez was more favorable. During a 1999 strike by umpires, which resulted in the resignation of 57 out of 68 officials, MLB seized the chance to dismiss those considered subpar, but Hernandez was not among them. Instead, he was retained, and from 1997 to 2017, MLB selected him to officiate 9 divisional series, 7 league championship series, 3 All-Star games, and 2 World Series, indicating that the league viewed him as an above-average umpire. Despite these official recognitions, Hernandez's public image suffered. By 2008, an anti-Angel Hernandez website had emerged, reflecting growing discontent. This sentiment persisted, fueled by his contentious calls and the perception that he consistently made poor decisions. While MLB's appointments suggested he met their standards for performance, the mounting negative attention and player criticisms painted a different picture, contributing to Hernandez's controversial status in baseball. Despite the widespread belief that Angel Hernandez is a poor umpire, an analysis from 2008 aimed to verify or refute this perception. Using an early version of pitch tracking technology called PitchFX, every ball and strike call Hernandez made that year was scrutinized. The findings revealed that, contrary to his negative reputation, Hernandez actually grades out as an above-average umpire. No matter how the data was sliced, Hernandez was identified as a quality umpire among an already impressive group. While the data and league assignments indicated he was performing well, public opinion remained harsh. Hernandez was often criticized by players and fans alike. The league, recognizing his competence, continued to assign him to significant games, including divisional series, league championship series, and World Series. Yet, despite this professional acknowledgement, Hernandez's image suffered from persistent negativity. In 2013, a single controversial call might have exacerbated his poor reputation. This call, combined with a series of contentious decisions and criticisms from players, further cemented Hernandez's place as one of the most divisive figures in umpiring. His perceived shortcomings seemed to overshadow the positive data and support from the league. But before diving deeper into this incident, a quick word from today's sponsor. We all want to have things both ways, like an ace pitcher who can also hit home runs, or a durable starter who avoids Tommy John surgery. We also desire stylish yet comfortable clothing. That's where Mack Weldon comes in. They offer timeless apparel made with modern performance fabrics. Their clothes look sharp but feel incredibly comfortable, whether it's their t-shirts, sweatshirts, or underwear. I wear their products multiple times a week because of their exceptional comfort and style. To check them out, click the link in the description or visit mackweldon.com and use promo code BDE for 20% off your first order. In a game that might have altered Angel Hernandez's career permanently, the Cleveland Indians faced off against the Oakland Athletics. The Athletics had a 3-0 lead, but the Indians quickly rallied, scoring runs in the fifth inning and taking the lead into the ninth. With the Athletics down to their final out, Adam Rosales hit a fly ball that appeared to clear the wall and tie the game. However, Hernandez, after reviewing the replay, ruled it a double instead of a home run. Everyone watching the game, including fans and analysts, believed it was a clear home run. The replay seemed to confirm this, making Hernandez's decision seem baffling. Despite the clear evidence, Hernandez's call stood. The Athletics manager was so incensed that he was ejected from the game. The Athletics ultimately lost, and the call became a major controversy. The incident ignited a debate about the efficacy of instant replay, which was still a relatively new addition to the game at the time. Peter Gammons, a respected baseball writer, suggested that Hernandez's ruling might have been a protest against instant replay, reflecting a belief that some umpires did not fully embrace the system. Hernandez, however, denied this accusation. He attributed the mistake to the replay angles available to him. In 2013, umpires reviewed replays on a single 19-inch monitor located in a small room near the clubhouse, rather than the sophisticated multiple-angle setups used today. Hernandez argued that the angles he had were not definitive, which led him to maintain the original call. MLB was not pleased with Hernandez's explanation. They publicly criticized his decision, asserting that he had sufficient angles to make an accurate call. This incident notably impacted Hernandez's career. For the first time in years, he was not selected for the World Series, the All-Star Game, or any playoff games in 2014. His absence from these key games continued in 2015, fueling speculation about his standing within the league. In 2017, frustrated by his lack of postseason assignments and not being promoted to crew chief, Hernandez filed a lawsuit against MLB, alleging racial discrimination. Around this time, Hernandez's reputation became even more notorious. Every major umpire-related controversy seemed to involve him. He ejected Ian Kinsler for arguing balls and strikes, leading Kinsler to criticize Hernandez publicly, suggesting he was always messing with games and should find a new job. This criticism added fuel to the fire, especially when MLB fined Kinsler but did not suspend him. In response, umpires across baseball wore white wristbands to protest what they perceived as growing abuse toward their profession. Public reaction was largely unsympathetic, and MLB intervened to stop the wristband protest. Although the protest was not initiated by Hernandez, he faced much of the public backlash because his controversial calls had sparked the movement. A year later, despite his ongoing discrimination lawsuit, Hernandez was selected to officiate in the playoffs. In one particularly contentious moment, he made a disputed call on a close play at first base involving the Red Sox. The controversy surrounding this decision further fueled criticism of Hernandez, reinforcing his image as one of the most controversial figures in umpiring. Hernandez's legal troubles only added fuel to the fire. He had sued MLB, claiming racial discrimination because he had not been promoted to crew chief, arguing that his Latino heritage was a factor. This lawsuit, coupled with his controversial calls, contributed to the growing perception that Hernandez was the worst umpire in baseball. Fans, players, and analysts all seemed to agree that he was problematic, with some even taking personal measures to confront him. For instance, the Phillies captain confronted Hernandez in the parking lot after a notorious game. In a 2022 game, Hernandez made several controversial calls that drew widespread criticism. He called a pitch a strike against Gene Segura with the bases loaded in a tie game. Later, in the bottom of the ninth inning, with the game on the line, he called Kyle Schwarber out on a questionable pitch. Schwarber's reaction was intense. He threw his bat, helmet, and confronted Hernandez, accusing him of consistently missing calls. Umpire Scorecard, an automated Twitter account that tracks umpire performance, reported that Hernandez missed 16 calls on called strikes, making mistakes 23% of the time. Despite the outrage, this game wasn't the worst officiated game of the year, but it gained significant attention and criticism on social media, accumulating 23,000 likes and briefly becoming the top story in baseball. Hernandez's ongoing lawsuit against MLB further complicated his situation. While the league did not dispute his claims of racial discrimination, the public and media largely perceived the issue as a matter of his poor umpiring rather than racial bias. When Hernandez returned to Philadelphia the following season, he faced renewed criticism. In a game where Bryce Harper was called out on a check swing, Harper confronted Hernandez postgame, stating that with Hernandez, it's the same story every year. This incident, like many others, quickly became a topic of discussion in the baseball world. The combination of Hernandez's high-profile blunders and his legal battles created a perfect storm of controversy. His mistakes and the perception that he was being punished for reasons other than his performance led many to conclude that his issues were not racially motivated but rather a result of his umpiring skills. The courts eventually sided with MLB, with the league publicly defending its actions to demonstrate that they were not discriminatory. Hernandez's lawsuit ultimately failed, but his reputation as a problematic umpire remained. The frequent attention to Hernandez's controversial calls and legal battles has overshadowed his accomplishments, and while MLB and the courts addressed the legal aspects of his suit, the public's perception of Hernandez remains deeply negative. By 2013, Angel Hernandez began facing significant setbacks in his career, losing key assignments and postseason opportunities. In 2018, it seemed like he might be selected for the World Series, but his performance during the ALDS that year undermined those prospects. Additionally, Hernandez was implicated in a controversy involving a conflict of interest. He had reportedly asked Homer Bailey to sign 11 autographs after umpiring a game where Bailey threw a no-hitter. Hernandez claimed this was standard practice among umpires at the time, but it added to the growing concerns about his integrity. The culmination of these issues contributed to Hernandez's deteriorating reputation. By the time his lawsuit against MLB concluded in 2023, Hernandez had become the only umpire who was routinely booed when his name was announced before games. Fans frequently heckled him, often in a manner that suggested he was a target of universal scorn rather than constructive criticism. The backlash was so intense that the umpire union had to publicly support Hernandez. They tweeted their solidarity, stating that they stand behind Angel Hernandez. Umpire Ted Barrett also publicly defended Hernandez, describing him as one of the kindest men he knew. Barrett claimed that if he posted every act of kindness Hernandez had performed, he could create a new post every day. He even recounted witnessing Hernandez save a woman from a tragic situation. Despite these personal endorsements, the criticism of Hernandez was not about his character but rather his umpiring skills. Contrary to the widespread belief that Hernandez was the worst umpire in baseball, data paints a different picture. According to the Washington Post in 2022, Hernandez ranked 54th out of 68 umpires, placing him outside the bottom 20%. A study by Boston University, which analyzed 11 years of umpiring data, did not include Hernandez among the top or bottom 10 umpires. Additionally, Umpire Scorecard, which tracks every pitch and assesses umpire accuracy, found that since its inception in 2015, there have been 33 umpires who performed worse than Hernandez in terms of accuracy. During the period when Hernandez was deemed the worst umpire in baseball, he was actually better than 28% of his peers according to these metrics. UmpireScorecard.org uses a system where a computer compares an umpire's calls to K-zone data to determine accuracy. Similarly, MLB conducts its own reviews, generating detailed reports for each umpire. These reports provide scores and feedback on missed calls, aiming to help umpires improve their performance. For instance, in the infamous game against the Phillies, which was widely criticized as having the worst umpiring of the season, the MLB umpire report claimed Hernandez was 96% accurate. In contrast, Umpire Scorecard rated him 88% accurate. The discrepancy between these reports highlights the challenges in assessing umpire performance and the limitations of TV strike zones, which can be imprecise. Often, different broadcasts will show varying strike zones, complicating viewers' perceptions of accuracy. For example, a pitch that appears high on TV might actually be a strike, or vice versa. The official rulebook defines the strike zone as the area over home plate from the midpoint between the batter's shoulders and the top of the uniform pants to just below the kneecap, but this definition does not always align with the actual strike zone as perceived by umpires. Discrepancies between the rulebook and on-field reality can lead to misunderstandings and controversies over umpire calls. Despite the controversies and criticisms, Hernandez's performance metrics suggest that he is not as poor an umpire as his reputation might imply. The data shows that while he has faced significant public backlash, his performance is not among the worst in the league when compared to his peers. The ongoing debate over his umpiring underscores the complexities of evaluating and critiquing officiating in professional sports. In baseball, the official rulebook defines the strike zone as extending from the midpoint between the batter's shoulders and the top of the uniform pants to just below the kneecap. However, in practice, umpires often set the top of the strike zone at the batter's belt line and the bottom at the hollow of the knee, adding an extra 2 inches on either side of the plate as a buffer zone. This means that a pitch an inch outside the plate might still be called a strike, which is considered acceptable by MLB guidelines and doesn't count as a mistake. This system explains why Angel Hernandez's accuracy score of 96% from MLB's grading system might not be as impressive as it seems. Many viewed this high score after a poorly received game and concluded that MLB's grading system is overly lenient, allowing umpires to perform poorly without fear of repercussions. Critics argue that MLB's grading system, which includes this buffer zone, might be too forgiving, effectively masking true performance issues. In reality, MLB's grading system is designed to evaluate umpires on a curve. While a 96% accuracy score might make an umpire appear very competent, in the context of MLB's grading system, it can sometimes reflect less favorable performance compared to other umpires. According to more stringent evaluations, a 96% score would place an umpire among the least accurate. Essentially, the MLB system's leniency could mask actual shortcomings, contributing to perceptions of inadequate umpiring. Every umpire, from rookie leagues to the majors, undergoes a rigorous evaluation process. To advance from rookie ball to higher levels, umpires must consistently receive elite evaluations. The process begins with umpire school, where top graduates are selected for rookie ball. From there, evaluations determine promotions to higher leagues like Low A, High A, and Double A. If an umpire fails to achieve elite evaluations and does not rank at the top of their league in accuracy for 3 consecutive years, they face either a return to umpire school or retirement. On average, umpire training classes consist of around 150 students, but only one in this group makes it to the major leagues. This translates to roughly a 0.67% chance of making it to the majors. Umpires typically spend at least a decade in the minor leagues, earning between $122,000 and $225,000 annually, with only a 6% chance of advancing to the majors. In comparison, drafted players have a 17.7% chance of making it to the majors, illustrating that becoming a major league umpire is statistically more challenging than becoming a player. Contrary to popular belief, the umpire union does not make it impossible to fire umpires. MLB umpires are rigorously evaluated, and if their scores fall below a certain threshold, they enter a probation period. If their performance does not improve during this time, they can be dismissed. Umpires can also be suspended for poor calls, though such disciplinary actions are not publicly disclosed, making it difficult to gauge their frequency. Despite this, any umpire who reaches the major leagues has demonstrated elite accuracy through every level of the minor leagues, making it rare for them to fall below MLB's accuracy standards. The perception that umpires like Angel Hernandez, who are viewed as underperforming, never get fired is frustrating to many fans. However, the evaluation system is designed to be effective. Since adopting advanced technology for evaluations in 2008, umpire accuracy has steadily improved. In 2008, the margin of missed calls was 6.8%, but this has been reduced to 3.2% today. Umpire accuracy has increased from 81.3% to 92.4% over the same period, showing significant improvement despite perceptions of frequent missed calls. Umpire accuracy has improved significantly since 2008, with incorrect calls decreasing by nearly 60%. While screen boxes make missed calls more noticeable, even umpires with below-average grades, like Angel Hernandez, would still excel at every minor league level. The pitches that appear missed on TV are often closer to the strike zone than they seem. In fact, if Angel Hernandez had been evaluated in 2008, he might have been the most accurate umpire in baseball. Despite his reputation, MLB's improved technology and evaluation methods have led to overall better accuracy in umpiring.